Who will be the surprises for the Ole Miss Rebels?
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast, and we're going to do a crossover today with Locked On Ole Miss and Stephen Willis. We're going to be talking about everything Ole Miss in terms of fall camp, quarterback predictions, yardage predictions, win totals, all kinds of fun stuff here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And thank you for making Locked On the Portal and Locked On Ole Miss your first listens each and every day. We are brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Again, we're going to go everything Ole Miss, add a little bit with the SEC throughout just to give some comparisons. But to get started, let's talk to the guy himself, Mr. Stephen Wells. How you doing, sir?
I am doing quite well. And if you're watching this, hey, give us a like, a subscribe, all of that stuff. We'd appreciate it very much. Brian, one thing that was interesting, I mentioned going into a couple of weeks ago that the next few weeks are going to determine whether or not this class is good or great or elite. And Ole Miss landing Craig Tutt, Ole Miss landing NASCAR McCoy, Ole Miss landing Anthony Davis, they're in the great category for what's going on. They missed out on Deuce Gerald. He's going to LSU. We'll probably talk about that. But the Ant Davis story, he's the guy they wanted all along. Him and Isaiah Williams, they wanted those two linebackers above all the others. And if they land those, that's a pretty big win for Ole Miss because I really like these players.
So do a lot of other Southeastern Conference schools and beyond. So hopefully they both end up having really good careers, but they're both good kids. I've been around both of them, especially Isaiah. So Ole Miss recruiting has a lot of stuff still coming up. They're still after some guys. We'll talk about that in upcoming episodes. But today it's going to be more about the overview of Ole Miss and the SEC. I'm going to ask basically a bunch of questions to Stephen, kind of go back and forth, just over under totals, talking about the best players for Ole Miss, who needs to do what for the Rebels to reach certain heights. Just going to have some fun with this today. So first question, besides defensive back, because you've told me this before, that's your position for Ole Miss you're most concerned about. Which position for the Rebels can least afford to take injuries and still see Ole Miss in the playoff discussion in late November?
Well, not counting quarterback because if Austin Simmons happened, it would change everything. But I think offensive line for Ole Miss, especially in the interior offensive line, they did not run the ball particularly well last season. And that's always been something that Lane Kiffin offenses have been pretty good at doing. They got a little bit big, in my opinion, over the course of last season. So I think they're slimming down a little bit right now. You got Patrick Kutas, who could line up at center. He could be your right guard. They really like Delano Townsend, the transfer from UAB, and they really like PJ Wilkins. Both of those guys have multiple years of eligibility, even though they transferred in. The interior of that offensive line, I think they like where it is right now over what they did a year ago, if that makes sense.
Well, that's very important. You're not going to win the SEC or any other major league just by slinging it. You got to be able to run the ball, especially short yardage and goal line. So they've got to figure that out. Last year, I think the injuries in the running back room were as big a problem as anything else, and they weren't as prepared as they are this year. Actually, that's going to be one of the questions I get to here in a little bit. Speaking of injury news, I'm sure that you and everybody else have mentioned on your podcast, it seems like DJ Lagway is always nicked up, the quarterback at Florida. To your knowledge, I mean, every team's got that guy. It's just like, why is this guy always banged up? Does Ole Miss have anybody that is banged up, or they're hoping to get back before the end of fall camp, anything like that, or are they in pretty good shape right now?
I think they're in pretty good shape at the moment. They just got Jalen Braxton back. He was that guy that the black no contact jersey just needed to come off of. Now he's back full go. If he can become the elite player, because he was freshman all SEC as a cornerback at Arkansas his freshman year. If he can do all that, Pete Golding is moving him to free safety, that elite play with the Trey Washingtons, that elite back end play. Ole Miss has to get that right. You know, an interesting thing about the fall camp, I'm not hearing Sage Ryan's name very often. You know,
Really?
he's not sticking out. I'm not hearing too much about Wydell Williams. I'm not saying they're not making plays, but they're not flashing to the point where people that have seen it are like, hey, this guy, or something like that. But Jalen Braxton moving to free safety, Nick Call, who is a high schooler that's just kind of quietly worked his way up the list. He's working with the ones right now. That seems to be the back end of the defense as we speak right now.
Well, Ole Miss's depth chart, just like everybody else's, is going to evolve during fall camp. And there are a lot of different players that need to step up. Sage Ryan, ironically, you mentioned him, is one of them that I kind of had penciled that, you know, he needs to make something happen. Is there any other DB, because that's probably the room that has the biggest question mark, that you think is going to be a stalwart just in coverage?
Ricky Fletcher, the cornerback transfer out of South Alabama. He's 6'3". He's about 200 pounds. He's very long. He apparently has been very consistent at the beginning of fall camp. Now, another player that's kind of trying out and trying to be that stalwart player at cornerback is Chris Graves. You know that name pretty well. Down there. He's apparently having a good first part of camp as well, him and Antonio Kite.
Well, it sounds like they've gotten more length and they've got more depth. Now they got to figure out who's going to be the guy that each week you can put out there on an island in the SEC, because that's certainly not an easy thing to figure out. Speaking of easy, if you had to guess right now, who's going to be the starter for the Ole Miss Rebels at running back, or is it just going to be rotation like crazy?
I think there's going to end up being a number one. I know the first rep of fall camp that they showed, it was Kewan Lacey, the transfer out of Lancaster, Texas. But Logan Diggs is going to be in that discussion, and Damian Taylor is going to be there as well, the transfer from Troy. So, but I think it's going to be between Kewan Lacey and Logan Diggs for who is the number one running back, honestly.
Let's stick with the running back theme, Stephen. Does whichever player it ends up being, I won't even hold you to the name, does the number one running back for the Rebels end up going over or under 800 yards rushing? Because I'm still pretty sure we're going to see a little bit of a committee in some capacity.
I think you might see it's one of those years where you have three backs that are all over 600 yards.
That's exactly the number I was going to use too.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised at all with that.
Yeah, it is one of those things because Lane Kiffin traditionally has morphed his offense to the talent that he has. He really likes Austin Simmons. He doesn't even play jokes about that. He likes Austin Simmons. Jackson Dart, he tried to recruit over him multiple years, and it didn't work out. He is not doing that with Austin Simmons, which means this offense is going to be shaded that way. That position and the receivers, especially the outside wide receivers, Lane Kiffin has talked about how it is a strength in the depth of this team. You have Cayden Lee, who did not drop a pass a year ago, the tight ends, everything working out. I think the running backs, I think it's going to be a 55 run, 45 pass. That's kind of the split.
Sure.
On the low end. It's not going to be something like air raid where 65 or 70% passes happen. But I do think this is going to be closer to what they were with Jackson Dart.
When we come back, we got more questions for Stephen on this crossover, Locked on Ole Miss and Locked on the Portal. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you can also help build your wealth. To that point of building your wealth, if you use the Monarch Money app, you have the opportunity to keep everything in one place, making it more efficient and easier to track your spending to save more money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All right. Thank you once again for making Locked on Ole Miss and Locked on the Portal your first listens each and every day. Hit that like and subscribe. We truly appreciate you stopping in. Stephen, let's continue on with some of these questions. I'm going to mix in a few SEC varieties here, but there's no particular order. Next question is regarding a player that you and I talk about often, Suntarine Perkins, great player. I think he will lead Ole Miss in sacks. I don't think I'm exactly going out on a limb. Maybe he doesn't, but that would be my guess. Who is the most likely player besides Perkins to get at least 5 sacks, if not more, for the Rebels this year?
I'm going to throw out a couple of names because everybody's going to say Cam Franklin's going to be up there. And I do think generally Cam Franklin's going to be up there. Deshaun Womack, those two are fighting it out for that Jared Ivey type position. A name that is kind of flashing in the background, and I think some of the sites saw this that watched practice, is DJ Holmes, honestly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so he's making plays. It looks like he is getting ready to get on the field. And for those that don't know, DJ is a pass rushing specialist. So if any time he gets on the field, 5 sacks, he's probably going to get it over the course of the season because getting to the quarterback is kind of what he does. I think he had 30 sacks his senior year or something.
Yeah, I remember him at Pahokee. I went and saw him and watched him work out. He did some drills for me and stuff. He's a freaky athlete, and I didn't know that he was still – like in contention. I had heard his name in a while, but if he's a guy that can just rush the passer for you, that is such a valuable commodity, man. It's a really big deal. All right. Does Ole Miss have too many transfers, in your opinion, to make a title run? I think they're going to make the playoff. That's my wild card pick. But do you think they have too many transfers to go all the way to like the Final Four? This is a big discussion point about transfer portal.
I don't think so. Especially with the way that college sports is right now. I don't think you can have too many transfer kids. I think transfer portal kids and high school recruiting, it's all the same thing at this point. It's all player acquisition. So it comes down to like the NFL model. Are you a lot on free agents or are you a lot on the draft? You know, that is the discussion that comes up. I don't think that anything negative is with a transfer portal player. Now, the difference is last year, I guess Brett Ciancia of Pick Six Preview said that Ole Miss was the second best roster statistically in the entire country. That isn't the case this year. There's going to be a step back. You don't have a Walter Nolan. You don't have a Princely Amamiellan or a first-round quarterback as a senior going through things. And Ole Miss is going to be dinged for that. But I tell people all the time, a step back isn't a step back from 9-3. You shouldn't say, oh, they go 8-4. Or 7-5. No, this is a 12-0 roster a year ago that if they take a step back, 10-2 is on the table. So that's a playoff level. I don't think they can win it. I don't think the talent is quite there to do it this year. Although next year, that's another 2024 type situation coming in. But this year, I don't think there's quite enough talent on the roster to win it, but there's plenty of talent to make the playoff.
That's kind of where I'm at too. I think continuity is important, and Lane is one of the few guys, I don't know how he's done this. He's one of the few guys that's won big with portal. It's ironic though, like Florida State did really good with it in 23 and bombed with it in 24. It's a little more random, but the portal is a really unique situation. All right. Before he leaves, whenever it is, I have no idea. Before Kiffin leaves Ole Miss, will he win at least one SEC title?
Ooh, that's an interesting question.
I mean, you don't know how long he's going to be there, but I would assume for a while. He seems pretty happy to me.
Yeah, if he's there 5-10 years with the way he builds rosters, I think he has as good a chance as anybody, honestly. I tell people all the time, the Grove Collective, they have a healthy collective, but they do not have a wealthy collective. So if a player becomes all about money and it becomes a bidding war, eventually you kind of price out Ole Miss. Ole Miss is pretty good at making $3 spent or $1 spent like $3, but there's certain things you can't overcome. So Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin are always going to have to deal with that. So last year, Ole Miss had the best or second best roster in the entire SEC. So the players can get there. I'm going to say yes. I think he can do it. It's going to be a little bit of work. As you can see in high school recruiting, it just looks Mississippi is a disaster for Ole Miss this year, but that doesn't mean that Lane Kiffin isn't going to get really good players from other places.
That is true. That is true. All right. Let's talk about Austin Simmons, my favorite guy on the rosters because I know him. Over under on his passing total this year. Let's go 3,200 yards for Austin Simmons. I think they're going to throw it around. They've obviously got receivers. Over under 3,200 yards for Austin Simmons. I'm assuming here that he plays all 12 games, obviously.
Yes, if he plays it all, it doesn't get hurt. I think he's going over that number, if we're going to be honest.
Me too.
I think ChatGPT, I did a simulation of the entire season, and they said that he would throw for 3,700 yards. That's their prediction.
Oh, wow. That's a big number, brother. That's borderline going to New York for the Heisman.
Yeah, and they said his two worst games, believe it or not, against the Kentucky Wildcats and against the Mississippi State Bulldogs, whenever they did their simulation. Yeah, seriously.
I mean, that's okay.
That's very SEC.
I'll go with my own opinion on that. I don't agree with that, but still, whatever it may be. Last year, the biggest problem for Ole Miss was the secondary. That's a question mark this year, but last year, let's see, they gave up 221 yards a game. That was 86th in the nation. Do they, A, get under that number, and B, can they get it down to at least close to 200? Like the difference in like 20 yards in a game doesn't sound like much, but that's usually a couple of first downs, and that in SEC games that go down to one possession, that's important. So what do you think? They're going to be under 220 yards they allow a game, or are they going to be over?
I think they're going to be under it a little bit because that the other team is going to run the ball because they're going to be more successful doing it than they were a year ago. So there's going to be less passes going out. And last year, Ole Miss had a problem, especially on the corner other than Trey Amos with busts. Against Kentucky, there was a 4th and 7. Yeah. And I think they're going to clean that up a little bit this year as well. I think the combination of the both is go under that 220 number.
Let's switch sides of the ball. My guy, Honeycomb, Cayden Lee, he's a really good receiver. Over under on receptions. I'm going 70. What do you say?
Over.
I think it's over as well. I've got him leading the SEC. I think he'll catch about 90.
Yeah.
But I might be a little high.
I look at what Elijah Moore did at Ole Miss. Whenever Lane Kiffin knows that he has a dude, he feeds that dude. And Lane Kiffin had Amari Cooper at Alabama, had 113 catches. If he's the dude, he's the dude. So if Honeycomb turns into a really good athlete and all that, the catches are going to kind of stack up on each other.
I think he's a great kid, and he really takes to his craft. Lee is one of those guys that just loves to be around football and absorbs it. I think that Lane Kiffin and the staff will reward him for that. That's just his personality. So I think it'll go well. When we come back, we're going to finish up with more questions about Ole Miss and the SEC. All right. Let's talk a little bit more about the offense. Statistically, I love stats, whether it's just SEC stats, whether it's Power 4, whether it's the entirety of the FBS. Would you say that Ole Miss will finish in the top 25 of the scoring rankings this year? Just pure point total. I think they will, but it is a first-year starting quarterback. You can always throw for a ton of yards and still not capitalize in the red zone. There's turnovers, etc. Does Ole Miss finish in the top 25 of the scoring rankings?
I think I'm not sure about this. I've heard it somewhere, but Lane Kiffin has finished in the top 10 in scoring or something like that every year he's been at Ole Miss or something like that, including 2022. That was the Jackson Dart first year. That was the Quinshawn freshman year. That was the Zach Evans year where they ran the football a good bit, but they scored a lot that year as well. That's my point. They've always found a way to score points. You don't have bad offenses with Lane Kiffin. So yes, I think they're going to end up in the top 25 of college football scoring.
Last year, just for record, they were at 38.6 and they were number 3. Obviously, a guy that knew the offense and everything, but everybody knew Lane was going to throw it all over the place, and they still did. So it's pretty impressive. No doubt about it. He gets that done. The player that I'm most interested in terms of offensive players, sticking with this theme, is Daquan Wright, because Luke Hawes is banged up right now. I don't know when he's projected back. Last season, he didn't have a ton of catches, but he was still a valuable guy. He's in the 20s for receptions. Over under for Daquan Wright at 35 receptions this year. And I'm going to guess Hawes is out for a month. I don't know the total. You probably know better than me.
Yeah, I think Haas is mid-season-ish coming back.
4 to 6 games.
Yeah, so we'll see exactly how that goes. I like the 35 for Daquan Wright because I think that Ole Miss is going to run more 12 personnel this year, and they're going to put in Caleb Odom, and the tight ends are going to get used. I think with Austin Simmons, you add Joe Judge as a quarterback coach. You have Charlie Weiss. The offense is going to have the tempo, the nuts and bolts that it always does, but they always change what they do. I think they're about to get pro style and West Coast, going back to Lane Kiffin's roots that he had with USC and Norm Chow. I think that is an idea of what the offense could look like. And USC always had big-time tight ends during that era.
Yeah, they always had guys that were clutch. They got overshadowed because of the receivers and, of course, the backfield they have. But they had guys go to the league at the tight end spot. So that's not really surprising. Third down, this is a spot where I think Austin Simmons will shine a lot more than what most young quarterbacks do. For those that don't know, and I'm guessing most of you do if you're listening to this pod, this is not your normal kid. He graduated high school 2 years early. He's really different. And he was an elite student. Last season, the Rebels were at 42.26% on third down conversion with a graduate student as a quarterback, etc. Over under on 42% this year for third down conversions for the Rebels. I'm going over because I trust Austin, but again, I know I'm biased. What do you say?
I think over as well, because I think that the short yardage game that Ole Miss is going to have this year is going to be a little bit different. Last season, Ole Miss struggled to run the football, so third and 1 and third and 2, there's going to be more conversions in that realm. And I think the passing game is going to look similar to the way it did a year ago.
I think that the biggest deficiency is also the biggest strength for Jackson Dart. He threw the deep ball really well, but that also leads you to being a little aggressive sometimes, and they'd get behind the chains once in a while and some easier first downs. And like Austin is going to get it out quick. You and I have talked about that. They'll be in a lot of 2nd and 4, 2nd and 5 situations. It'll be boring in a sense. It'll be kind of like San Francisco 49ers 1991, a little bit of a West Coast look sometimes, but they're going to be in manageable circumstances. And he adds an element of running that some people may not know. I know you've talked about it some on your show. I've seen him play. I know he can move. Austin may not want to be a runner first, and he won't be. But when he needs to get out there on that edge, even if it's not a designed call, I bet you he picks up some third downs and fourth downs with his feet. It may only be a 3-yard game, but he'll get what he needs. And if you move the sticks, my friends, you move the sticks. All right, let's talk a little bit about chunk yardage plays. This is something Ole Miss was second in the nation last year on 20-yard passes or more. Texas was number 1 with 80. Ole Miss was number 2 with 79. Obviously, again, Jackson could throw the ball down the field, and they had Trey Harris, and so they had guys that could go get it. What number do you think this year? I don't think they'll hit 79 because I think Austin will throw short a little more. He's just so comfortable with it. But what number? Are you going to go over 60, over 70? Where do you think it'll be?
I think it'll be closer to like 55. I think this offense for Ole Miss this year under Austin Simmons is going to be very methodical. It's going to look a lot more NFL. And NFL takes what you give them. And they're going to be afraid of Deshaun Stribling and Harrison Wallace and Cayden Lee, and the middle of the field, the short stuff is going to be available. And the processing ability of Austin Simmons, he's going to take that option. He's going to see it quicker than you expect him to see it.
I'm glad you brought up processing. Austin Simmons, again, very intelligent young man. Do you think that his ability to process part of interceptions are goofy, and it's always blamed on the quarterback? Guy runs the wrong route, there's tips, etc. if you just look at a stat box. But I think he will stay out of harm's way and throw the ball away, take a sack, run out of bounds, whatever. Saban used to say, if it drive ends on a punt, extra point or field goal, I'm good. Don't turn the ball over, which honestly makes a lot of sense. It's probably why he's going to the Hall of Fame. But the point is still the same. Simmons is a very smart guy. I don't think he'll throw a ton of picks. And even a lot of guys that were really good, whether college or pro, their first year as a starter at a new level, they were terrible. Like Peyton Manning, when he came out, set the NFL record for interceptions in a season. Not what you want to be known for. It obviously turned out good for him in the long term. like 28 interceptions his first year with the Colts. Do you think Simmons will be over or under 10 interceptions this year for the Rebels?
I think he will be under, and I think the reason he's going to be under is because while they're starting out, Ole Miss plays 9 games in the state of Mississippi and only 3 games outside of the state this season. So 5 of the first 6 games are in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. There's a nice, easy ramp for a new quarterback to figure out what it is all about. I think the thing for Austin Simmons is, hey, take the risk. Knowing when to take the chance. Don't just take the checkdowns. Don't just play it safe. Is he throwing the ball downfield? Does he have that level of confidence? That is between first-year starter and moving on. We saw Lenore Sellers do that about week 6, whenever that clicked in.
He did. He got ramped up in the back half.
Yeah, and whenever the sooner Austin Simmons hits that point to where he ramps and he starts feeling good, the better Ole Miss football can be this year.
I completely agree. And again, they got Honeycomb and they got, Daquan. And when Luke gets back, they've got comfortable guys in the slot and tight end. If the outside receivers are consistent, if they're truly on the same page, I mean, he could throw for 4,000 yards and it wouldn't surprise me. But like you, I think it'll be a little bit different. More short passes, more screens, more yards after the catch on like crossers and deep overs. And it'll look different. But if you get to the end zone, who cares?
Yeah.
So last question, over under on Austin Simmons rushing total, 300 yards.
I'm going to go with under. Lane Kiffin talked in a press conference after a couple of practices ago when he was asked, is Austin Simmons going to do what Jackson Dart did at Ole Miss? And Lane Kiffin said no. Just bluntly, no. He's going to throw the ball, which makes me think Trinidad Chambliss, the quarterback out of Fair State, that makes sense. You never want to take your quarterback off the field, but Lane Kiffin through J.J. Pegues showed his willingness to use a specialty player last season. Trinidad Chambliss, he reminds me of those option quarterbacks from back in the 90s and 80s running the wishbone. He had a little bit of
stuff like that,
little bit of wiggle. So I think that is the specialty running game, the quarterback run game that they're going to use from time to time. I think Trinidad Chambliss ends up getting 100, 150 yards, and Austin Simmons ends up scrambling for 150, 200 yards, something like that.
That wouldn't be really surprising to me. If they use that guy in the red zone, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's also in the backfield with Austin Simmons and maybe Kewan Lacey. They just to play he may not even get the handoff or take the fake. He may just act like he's going to catch a pass or something and they throw it to somebody else just to try to distract people. Wayne comes up with some crazy stuff, so nothing would be all that surprising. Stephen, tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
Check me out on YouTube at Locked On Ole Miss Podcast, and we're also available wherever you get your podcasts online. If you prefer the audio version, hit me up at my Twitter address down below. We're on all of the socials, and it is the most fun way to follow Ole Miss sports, so we look forward to you stopping by.
Thank you, sir. You can find the Portal Podcast wherever you get your pods for free, Podbean, Apple, Spotify, and everywhere else. And, of course, on YouTube. Like and subscribe. We will see you again soon.